these countries a kind of menu that they could provide, and out of these menus, some countries can provide, can do better on this, better on that, so that they can be very selective in terms of achieving whatever the priority they have.
Not one island nation can survive or can do anything by itself. So in the past years, we've worked closely with other governments, and we truly believe that by working together with the other governments, we can somehow pursue this further, pursue the agenda of conserving water and advocating for mitigation options for climate change, especially for our region, because we know that we are definitely a few disasters away from being extinct.
It's incumbent upon the Asia-Pacific community to demonstrate how we could achieve the SDGs using science, technology, and innovation. But there's one gap, though, that we need to realize. For most of the countries, the developing countries in this region, we lack capacity, we lack the skill, we lack the know-how. So we need to build on that so that individual countries could be more prepared in addressing the challenges of the SDG.
Asia has a key to attain sustainability of the world. But Asia lacks good governance in that sense to promote sustainability agenda, and also basic resources needed for that. And now world is really committed to this, and more funding, more technologies, and more capacity building opportunities are going to be created, and therefore Asia should grasp these opportunities to make itself more sustainable.
1 2 ทดสอบเช็ค1 2
Education for all.
SDG is the last hope that we have to have a sustainable world.
The region will have to understand that the long-term challenges on Earth, whether it's climate change, whether it's peace, whether it's equity, that these are systemic and structural issues that needs to be addressed. And we need to look at how we exist on Earth collectively rather than in fragmented silos.
Sustainable Development Goals are sending us a clear message that economic and environmental well-being are indivisible.
Financing is the catalyst. All of this will mean something more if we can truly democratize the capital markets, so that a woman sitting in Laos, a woman sitting in Laos, can be actually growing her business by getting some funding for, say, someone sitting in Bangladesh, and Hassan sitting in Bangladesh, and basically being able to be the investor. So it really is, everyone becomes an investor, everyone becomes an entrepreneur.
Making use of ICT as the vehicle, leveraging it, coming up with all these infrastructure and innovative solutions. To me, that's the key.
Access to reliable, cheap energy. Cheap because everyone should be able to afford it, regardless of where they work. And also clean because it has to be, you have to ensure that emission of carbon dioxide is cut short.
The government, especially the politicians, they should make a commitment to implement this sustainable development goal by ensuring disaster risk reduction and the climate change adaptation issue in the development plan.
For me, the most important goal for Asia and Pacific is Goal 13, taking action against climate change. Climate change is now affecting every country on every continent, with the most impacted being the poor and vulnerable.
The sustainability and the health of the environment is very much related to the health and the well-being of the nation. I mean, Maldives as a low-lying country and a country which is dependent on fisheries and tourism sector. We rely on the environment and its natural resources very much. I think we should team up to save the environment right now, or it'll be too late tomorrow.
Most of cities in the Asia Pacific are very prone to extreme climate events, which will affect the most vulnerable communities and worsen the impact of urbanizations. With proper planning by prioritizing climate change in the city agenda, I believe the city government, together with all its stakeholders, will be able to create a resilience.
We have to look at consumption patterns at a global level where we need an absolute reduction in material throughput and energy use, but we also have to look at national levels, and very important, we have to start looking at different stakeholder groups like youth, and we have to be looking at our cities, because this is the thriving hub of the economy.
Most important thing is not only to provide a kind of that enough water to the people, but to have a safe water to the people, especially on that sanitation improvement. That's very important. So that the sanitation improvement also should not be only the sanitation with toilets, but sanitation with toilet and the treatment system.
Access to clean and affordable water just means that people will be healthier, and when you have healthy people, you improve your livelihoods, and people are more active and around the community. And so if you have an active community, this is a great chance for people to adapt to changes of climate change.
We need to be the main promoters of sport and healthy lifestyle, because it's the best weapon against non-communicative diseases.
What I feel is healthy life is very much important in today's time, because in this past life, nobody is able to take care of his healthy life.
Ideally, we'll see parity between men and women, not just in terms of social welfare, but also in terms of workforce, in terms of politics, in terms of the economic participation of women.
Girls are still damaged by harmful practices and forced early and child marriage. Every young girl should have an access to education and sexual and reproductive health to fulfill their potentials.
The region has been really successful on some fronts in eradicating gender inequality, but I really feel that they need to improve, for example, the sectors that they reach out to. So in particular, my point of view is always to focus on the youth, because the youth, as I have proven now, can really make a difference and make a stand on their own when they're given the opportunities to present their opinions and to do what their power enables them to.
Everyone needs education, especially women with disability. If they have good education, they will have a good job or good income.
The key for socio-economic development is the ability to unleash the creative potential of our children through a high-quality educational system, through having strong science and technology institutions, through having an ecosystem where innovation is promoted, and through having linkages with industry and agriculture.
From CGM school. I want every girl child to be educated like me.
I believe that any issue in the world can be tackled with education if you provide a child with the right amount of skills, with the right amount of exposure and education. That broadens the perspective of a child, and he looks at things differently, and that helps him become a leader himself. And so all these other things that we worry about can be tackled if we create leaders like these.
The whole point of SDG for us is no one left behind. Even if we cannot see or cannot hear, we have vision and we have voice.
Democracy and good governance are complementary. Peace.
sustainable peace. Peace at home, which is actually one of the major goals of the sustainable SDGs.
We need to make sure that data reflects the reality on the ground. We need to enhance the social protection system and make sure that it encompasses all realms and segments of the population. We are the bear holders of this agenda. The time to act is now.
A successful sustainable development agenda can only take place when both the private sector and the public sector, of course with the civil society, work together to achieve these sustainable development goals. For this we need partnerships at all levels.
The ESCAP should display some kind of roadmap for all these countries, that a kind of menu that they could provide, and out of these menus some countries can provide, do better on this, better on that, so that they can be very selective in terms of achieving whatever the priority they have.
Not one island nation can survive or can do anything by itself. So in the past years, we've worked closely with other governments, and we truly believe that by working together with the other governments, we can somehow pursue this further, pursue the agenda of conserving water and advocating for mitigation options for climate change, especially for our region, because we know that we are definitely a few disasters away from being extinct.
It's incumbent upon the Asia-Pacific community to demonstrate how we could achieve the SDGs using science, technology and innovation. But there's one gap though that we need to realize. For most of the countries, the developing countries in this region, we lack capacity, we lack the skill, we lack the know-how. So we need to build on that so that individual countries could be more prepared in addressing the challenges of the SDG.
Asia has a key to attain sustainability of the world. But Asia lacks good governance in that sense to promote sustainability agenda, and also basic resources needed for that. And now world is really committed to this, and more funding, more technologies, and more capacity building opportunities are going to be created, and therefore Asia should grasp these opportunities to make itself more sustainable.
We want education for all.
SDG is the last hope that we have to have a sustainable world.
The region will have to understand that the long-term challenges on Earth, whether it's climate change, whether it's peace, whether it's equity, that these are systemic and structural issues that needs to be addressed. And we need to look at how we exist on Earth collectively rather than in fragmented silos.
Sustainable Development Goals are sending us a clear message that economic and environmental well-being are indivisible.
Financing is the catalyst. All of this will mean something more if we can truly democratize the capital markets, so that a woman sitting in Laos, a Ming, a woman sitting in Laos, can be actually growing her business by getting some funding, or say someone sitting in Bangladesh and Hassan sitting in Bangladesh and basically being able to be the investor. So it really is everyone becomes an investor, everyone becomes an entrepreneur.
Making use of ICT as the vehicle, leveraging it, coming up with all these infrastructure and innovative solutions. To me, that's the key.
Access to reliable, cheap energy. Cheap because everyone should be able to afford it, regardless of where they work, and also clean because it has to be, we have to ensure that emission of carbon dioxide is cut short.
The government, especially...
Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. We will start our session as informal group from last night. Kindly take your seats.
Thank you, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. We will now reconvene the meeting of the informal working group. And we will begin from where we left off last night with the discussion on the roadmap. As you know, we will go through the roadmap today, the cleaned version, so that we can get it out of the way and move on with the rest of the program for the day.
No, we'll go through the roadmap. So first the roadmap. You need to.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Secretariat will now
It's not the formal function.
put the document on the screen. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to raise 2 points at this juncture. First of all, this thing happened before, but the revised text was not received by me. Maybe same thing could happen to other people. Somewhat the mailing list is not working well, so I just want to point that out. And second, we are wondering why we are holding this informal meeting here at the room 2. We had a meeting yesterday at room 4, and I think this is more of the intergovernmental discussion by nature. So the plenary room is open for everyone. So that is give us different different setting for discussion. So could you explain to us why you have chosen to use this room and this format of the very inclusive setting? Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Japan. I'll ask Secretary to respond to your question.
Sorry.
On the second question, the simple answer is just really a matter of practicality and convenience. The informal working group has always been open-ended. There was never any intention to have a select group of member states participate. So we thought that given the process that we had described yesterday evening, that the informal group would wrap up its business and then we would move immediately to the plenary. It just was simpler to do everything in the same room rather than have everybody go to conference room 4, meet there for however long it would take, and then come back upstairs to convene the plenary. That it was just really a matter of practicality and convenience. On the documentation, my colleagues advised me that the documents were circulated via email last night, and there are hard copies available in the room. I believe that the basis for the circulation last night was the roster of people who had signed up for the initial meeting on Saturday, and there was the email addresses and contact information there that they were working from. So, but we do apologize if anybody was omitted, or if I understand that other delegations also had some issues with receiving it, and we do apologize for that. I think we have had some issues with our email reaching some delegations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. So can we go through the draft roadmap now?
So we have one issue.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just mentioned a roadmap. I mean, the copy of the roadmap has not been circulated. We have the copy of the form and function, which we appreciate, but we need to take a look at the paper, written paper. I mean, everyone should have the sorry, this is again form and function. So I have 2 copies of form and function, but rather than that, I need a copy of the roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The document that we discussed last night, the clean version, is there before you. And as you recall, last night we had asked China to, as we address Para 1.
It's up there. It's up there.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. While appreciating the screen before us, I mean at the podium, but we would be more appreciative if the printed version of the revised clean text is circulated. Thank you.
Thank you. While Secretary is working on it, I'd like to request the distinguished delegate from China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very good morning to you all. As we reiterated in our previous interventions, as well as in all the relevant statements made by the group of D77 China in the process of formulating the 2030 agenda in New York, we do believe that the CBDR applies to the entire development agenda that has been adopted. And we would like to stress that the CBDR is an acceptance that all member states have responsibilities for global and regional sustainable development, no matter whether you are one of those states with the extensive means or whether you are a state with the least. It is very important to recognize our different levels of development in the implementation at the regional level, in particular the roadmap that we are adopting. Our delegation cannot go along with agreeing on a regional roadmap without identifying the guided principles. But having said that, as our delegation has been engaging in this process with constructiveness and spirit of cooperation, we will continue to do so to move things forward by showing our maximum flexibility on this matter. And therefore, we would like to propose the following wording as an alternative. Instead of guided by all the principles of the Real Declaration, and blah, 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 we will propose to make it very short by saying guided by all the principles reaffirmed in the 2030 agenda. I've consulted delegation of Japan, Australia, and India before the meeting, and we hope that delegation concerned could show flexibility and meet us halfway. Thank you.
Thank you, Chena. Is there any reaction from the floor? I see none. Can we now accept the proposal by China? Thank you. Oh, sorry, Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Could you show the cleaner text in the screen? So we delete all the language in yellow, or except for the out two by China. Am I correct?
Thank you, Japan. We will now clean the text. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, the distinct delegate of China, for providing the new suggestion. And thank you for the Secretariat putting the cleaner version of the text. I think this is, we see a large improvement. At the same time, all the principles are already mentioned in the Resolution 71 and Addis Ababa, so it's kind of redundant, but if that is the only way forward, we would consider favorably. But in the meantime, could we take a look at the other part of the roadmap so that we will come back to it later?
Thank you, Japan.
Yes, so we have. Can we go back?
So we'll go through the roadmap paragraph by paragraph. Paragraph 3. The U.S.
Thank you, Chair. Our delegation believes that any reference to policy space within this paragraph must recognize that it is not a blanket exemption from existing international commitments. Therefore, we would like to propose that after it says policy space, if we can also add the phrase, while remaining consistent with relevant international rules and commitments. Thank you.
Thank you, U.S. Are there any other views?
Oh, actually, sorry. With respect to its policy space and priorities while remaining consistent with relevant international rules and commitments, and creating no additional reporting requirements for governments. Thank you.
thank the distinguished delegate from the United States. If there are no other views, we will move to para 4. Para 4. Para 4. The text, also Japan, you have the
Thank you. As for the para 4, I mean, my delegation's proposal is to keep the note and note the intention by the Secretary too. But to show the flexibility that you accommodate view of others, I think we are amenable to accept the recognize rather than note. Thank you. But not in favor of supporting support. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Are there any other views? Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I wish to reiterate that by using the word support, it doesn't go beyond the mandate of the 2030 agenda. Like simply, for example, Para 21 said that the Regional Commission should have the role to facilitate the implementation of the 2030 agenda. So we need some concrete language to set up the guidelines and how Secretariat and how ESCAP could lay out a preparation and plan for the future, how to support the member states. So I think by simply take note wouldn't be clear enough. We will still support using the word support. Thank you.
Thank you, Thailand. China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to seek a clarification on, could we recognize something that is going to happen? I mean, this is, the sub-item ABCD is something that the Secretary will do in the future from what I'm stating. So I just want the clarification on whether it is appropriate to recognize something that the Secretary is going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, China. The U.S.
Thank you, Chair. Our delegation is satisfied with the majority of the statement. We just wanted to add at the end just to make sure that no additional resources will be used in this work. So we would like to propose adding the comment after the Secretariat within existing resources. The Secretariat, comma, within existing resources, too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, yes. I'll give the floor to the Secretariat. Okay. Can we ask the distinguished delegate from, in view of the issue raised by China, of Iran and Japan, on the word recognized? Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, as it regards to the recognized, this delegation is flexible on that. Thank you so much.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think we can find the way forward. I think by the using the language here with few amendment, our suggestion is member states note the support by the Secretariat, comma, within existing resources and mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now agree to this text? Note the support by the Secretary. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are flexible on this.
Thank you. We will now go clean up the text. 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, B, timeline and milestones. Para 5. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. We don't have major problem with the paragraph 5. But my delegation would like to suggest minor changes. Instead of member state will continue, my delegation proposed the member states intend to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Are there any other views? I see none. Can we now accept the changes proposed by Japan? Thank you. We'll clean up the text now. Para 6. Para 7. Thank you. We will now go back to para 1 and we'll try and clean the text subject to your agreement. Para 1 is there before you. Are there any other alternative views? Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think my delegation, in generally speaking, is agreeable to the language proposed by China, with one exception. I think my suggestion is to take out reaffirmed, but still, I think the gist of the proposal remains the same, guided by all the principles in the 2030 agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask the distinguished delegate from Australia? You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the suggestions. Just to point out that the rest of the sentence doesn't quite make sense now, so that there will just need to be some editorial change to the overall sentence, because it says guided by all the principles in the 2030 agenda, in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. I mean, is that how it's meant to read?
Thank you, Australia. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank our colleagues from Japan and Australia for their comments. As I said, it is important for us to reaffirm the principles. We've already showed the maximum flexibility by not mentioning the CBDR. So could I ask the Japanese colleagues to explain the rationale why they want to delete the word reaffirmed? Because clearly the principles have reaffirmed, and this is a word that we use in the Agenda 2030. And as to the concerns raised by Australian delegation, maybe we could just add a comma before the guided and at the end of agenda, if that makes more sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Sorry, China. My apology. Are there any other views on Para 1? Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think the reaffirmation of principle, we don't see that many in the resolution 70/1. So that's why, I mean, all the principle reaffirmed or reiterated can be included in the guiding principle. That is my delegation suggestion.
Thank you, Japan. Are there any other views? Are there any other alternative views to Japan's proposal? Pakistan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to help to move forward, maybe we can say guided by all the existing principles. By all the existing principles in the agenda, in the 2030 agenda, in the implementation of the 2030 agenda for, and so on.
Thank you, Pakistan. China, can we?
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor again, and thank Pakistani colleagues for their proposal. Actually, I'm looking at the Agenda 2030, the part, our shared principles and commitments from Para 10 to Para 13. And I've noticed that the reaffirm is the only word that's being used in Para 11, Para 12, but we can go along with the suggestions maybe added, reaffirmed, and reiterated. But I don't know if that is making any difference.
Thank you, China. Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Actually, as when we are talking about the principles in Agenda 2030, it doesn't mean that the principles envisaged or reflected in the agenda are the innovated, let's say, or new set of principles. They are principles that already has been agreed in different venues and international documents agreed by all, and then they have been reiterated and reaffirmed within the context of the agenda. Therefore, I think the term reaffirmed is makes sense here, and it gives the sense that we are going to reaffirm the principles that have been already agreed upon. So this is my understanding, and I think it's. But in the end, I think we can go move on this issue, and then if you look at the original proposals that yesterday were made by different delegations, now by this language that has been proposed by China, I think we are moving far away from the original concept, and that's why I ask the flexibility of the other colleagues, at least to go ahead with affirmation of the principles, and this is the thing that we can go along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Iran. I'd like to ask the distinguished delegate from India.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to echo the comments from China and our distinguished delegate from Iran to retain the word reaffirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, India. Can we ask the distinguished delegate from Japan if for their reaction? If we can keep reaffirm. Japan.
Thank you. I think my delegation's alternative suggestion is guided by all the agreed principle in the 2030 agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Are there any other views? Any other delegates wishing to speak on this part? The alternative proposed by Japan and guided by all the agreed. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no problem of the word agreed, but I don't think it makes any sense because the principle, the agenda has been agreed by all the leaders. If we want to reiterate the agreed, it's redundant and it doesn't make any sense or additional value. I hope that the delegation could show some flexibility and meet us halfway.
Thank you, China. Japan?
I think whether agreed or whether existing or reaffirmed, the principles contained in the 2030 agenda. That's why my delegation suggestion is to delete the reaffirmed. I mean, simply make it simple, so that you can read reaffirmed in between lines, and others can read reiterated in between lines. So I will go back to the original proposal of the deletion of the reaffirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Are there any other views? Japan, you have the floor.
Again, the intention is that we agree. We have the agenda committed by all the member states, and Japan is one of the countries signed up to that. So, if we support or attach importance once again to the principles, we want to attach importance to all principles. So, we don't want to put the qualification before principle or after the principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Any other views from the floor? China, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've mentioned before in my intervention, reaffirm is the word that we use in the Agenda 2030 in the section of the principles. And it's not only used before the reference of CBDR, it also used in other principles, which is recognized by all. If Japan has concerns on using only one word of reaffirm, then maybe we can flexible by adding the word reaffirmed and reiterated. Thank you.
Thank you, China. Any other views? Iran, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, as consultation is now bilaterally ongoing, could we move to item 4, please? Paragraph 4, just to see it if it's, yeah, that's just the 4, the chapeau. Member states, I just want to make sense when we read it out. Member states note the support by the Secretariat. Yeah, just one additional Secretariat has been redundant. And then within existing resources and mandate it. It seems to me it means the mandate the Secretariat to do so and so on. So it will mandate it too. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Can we go back to part 1 and see if there's any agreement by Japan and China on the text? Japan on part 1?
I think we are not too far apart. I just want to find some language that is acceptable to all of us. So I think the iterate and reaffirm, I think that is a better than the simply reaffirmed. So, but the iterated, I don't know whether the principle are reiterated in the 2030 agenda. Just need to take a look at the text of the 2030 agenda, just to make sure that's capture the issues here. Thank you.
Can you ask the delegates if we can, in response to Japan's comments, if we can keep reaffirm and reiterate? Japan?
I think, having taken a look at the text, I think we all find the reaffirm, and that's fine. But the reiterate is not there. So instead of reiterated, we stick to the suggestion of agreed. So principles reaffirmed and agreed in the 2030 agenda. If that works, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that agreeable with everyone? I see no objection. We'll now clean up the text. Thank you very much. If this is acceptable, can we now delete the first paragraph? US, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate all of the corrections. We think we're in a good place. Can you actually scroll down to the cleaned up text? The flow seemed, let's see, guided by all the principles reaffirmed and aligned to or aligned upon in the 2030 agenda. No, just the word to. Reaffirmed and agreed to in the 2030 agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, yes. Can we go back to para 1 and delete para 1? Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll now delete para 1. Para 2, Can we clean the text now? Para 2. Thank you. We will now clean the text. Para 4. Can we clean the text now? Thank you. We will now clean the... Sorry, yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. One moment. I'm reading through this, and the grammar seems a little off. Member states note the support by the Secretariat and mandate it within existing resources. It feels as though and mandate it should come before within existing resources. So member states note the support by the Secretariat and mandate it within existing resources too. So just some word rearrangement. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Japan.
I think my suggestion is the after comma within its existing resources and a mandate, maybe mandate single or plural, plural, yeah. So yeah, within its existing resources and mandate, plural, to A, B, C, and D. Thank you.
China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our delegation has no difficulties regarding this new amendments, but maybe mandated is, I wonder if it's appropriate to use mandated here. Maybe we can say request, but I can be flexible on this word. Thank you.
Japan, you have the floor.
Let me reiterate my suggestion. The member state note the support by Secretariat, comma, within its existing resource and mandate. I don't know whether the requested or unmandated proposed by China and US gives a better flow of the language. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Are there any other views? China, you have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I think there's some confusion here. I just want to seek clarification on what is the original proposal of mandated come from? It's from the U.S. delegation, or it's just a typo error?
I'll ask Ms. to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I understand all the suggestions, the original amendment proposed by Japan was member states note the support by the Secretariat, comma, within its existing resources and mandates, comma, to. And then I think the United States and Iran and China, both in the attempt to help clean up the language or help it to flow a little bit, then moved mandate. But I believe that Japan's proposal was to have to emphasize the point of the existing resources and the existing mandates.
Thank you, Mitch. The U.S.
Thank you, Chair. We support the Japanese delegation's comments regarding this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you, the U.S. Can we go back to original supported by that was proposed by Japan? China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our delegation can also go along with the suggestions made by Japan and U.S. So I understand that we should delete the it proposed by Iran. And if note the support by the Secretary to do something makes sense, then we can go along with this formulation. Thank you.
Thank you, China. Can we now clean up the text? I see no reaction. We will now clean up the text. Sorry, Iran.
Thank you. And just my point is regarding the mandates as a plural form. I think it should be singular form.
Thank you, Iran. We'll ask Secretary to work on the editorial bit. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, for your contribution this morning. Can we now close this document? As time is not on our side now. Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have now concluded this working group meeting. We will now move into the plenary, and I would like to invite the chair to come and take his seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ministers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you back to the continuing discussion of the session 3, agenda item 5, regional road map for implementing the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, and the form and function of the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development and its follow-up and review process. Without further delay, we will start with the introduction by the chair of the informal working group. Mr. Peter, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to present a very brief statement of the work that was conducted in the informal working group. There were approximately 12 delegations participating in the final session of the working group, with civil society observing. The informal working group proceeded on the basis of the shared views established at the preparatory meeting held on 2nd April 2016 and continued its review of the documents that captured the discussions. all members of the group worked with a high level of commitment to consensus on a meaningful outcome for the APFSD. We have a high degree of confidence that we have been able to produce 2 sets of recommendations which can find common ground among all of us in the room. This does not mean that these recommendations are weak. I am confident that you will find that these recommendations provide a strong foundation for organizing the APFSD going forward as an inclusive intergovernmental forum, despite the fact that all is not resolved at the global level. I also trust that you will find that we have a good basis for developing a roadmap going forward. On behalf of the group, I thank my fellow delegates for arriving at the document that is there before you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. We will now review the results of the informed working group, starting with the recommendation of the form, function, and modalities for the APFSD. Are there any comments on the document? Yes.
Give the floor to the Secretary of the Commission. Ask the Secretary.
Okay.
The Secretariat.
He will. Please. There are no comments, please. Secretary, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention for the information of the forum that there is a reference in there to within existing mandates, and as has been past practice, there's been a statement that has been usually read to inform the body, referencing that past General Assembly resolutions and reports of the Advisory Committee on Administrative and Budgetary Questions, they all in these resolutions and reports, they all note the use of the phrase within existing resources, and they emphasize the responsibility of the Secretariat to inform the General Assembly thoroughly and accurately about whether there are enough resources to implement a new activity. This is, I'm a little bit ahead of the time, but I felt it was important to mention this here. The references, whenever the phrase within existing resources is used, the General Assembly resolution has in the past reaffirmed that the Fifth Committee is the appropriate main committee of the General Assembly entrusted with responsibilities for administrative and budgetary matters. The General Assembly also reaffirms the role of the Advisory Committee on Administrative and Budgetary Questions. And then it expresses its concern at the tendency of its substantive committees and other intergovernmental bodies to involve themselves in administrative and budgetary matters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Of Japan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My delegation would like to appreciate the explanation from the Secretary of the Committee. I myself was the delegate to the Fifth Committee. We all know the such element by heart. But the question here is we want to make it clear from the Secretariat of the ESCAP that you would not seek additional funding to implement this form and function and roadmap. That is the intention of my delegation. So, I mean, while understanding the procedure matters, more importantly, the commitment of the ESCAP Secretariat is important. We would like to hear from the Secretariat whether you Secretariat understand the underlying spirit of the language. Just agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
United States.
United States.
Thank you, Chair. We echo the comments of our distinguished Japanese colleagues and would also like to propose that we add a slight phrase into this first paragraph. So after it says, "and must not increase reporting burdens," we would also like to add, comma, "nor the budget and operating costs of ESCAP," comma.
Do you agree with this proposal? United States.
Nor the budget and operating costs of ESCAP. Costs pluralized. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. Okay. We will clear the language. Thank you. Distinguished delegates, we will now review the results of the informal working in respect to the recommendations on the regional roadmap. Are there any comments? Okay. Okay. Thank you. No comments. Thank you, Mr. Peter, and members of the working group who have led us to this important outcome. Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we have established an excellent basic and created commitment and ownership through this process of dialogue, reflection and consensus building. We now have a regional forum that will bring government officials and stakeholders together to facilitate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I would like to congratulate us all on the result. Is something that we as a region can be proud of. Before closing the sessions, may I invite a final round of comments. Thank you. No comments. Thank you, distinguished delegates. I would like to invite an update by the Secretariat on the process going forward to the adoption of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next event is a special event being organized by the Global Partnership for Data. We expect to be able to release a soft copy of the draft report in English with the chair summary as an annex. We plan to resume the session at 3:30 in this room for a review of the report and chair summary and adoption of the report. We will take all comments on both documents at that time. Distinguished delegates, I forgot to inform you that the Global Partnership is here, room 3.
Thank you, Mr. Ford, to you. Thank you, distinguished delegates. I declare the session closed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.